I don't know what VW is classified as, but as we look at kind of recent history, it's actually been bloody successful. But again, the assumption is that success comes from being a better producer. Every other kind of other source of advantage just disappears. The key article, if you're going to work in this area, is the 1998 article. Again, I've got a scanner on the wheel. I've actually scanned quite a lot for you, which I said I wasn't going to, but I need to know several years ago. If we turn to kind of sector matrix, I'm asking you to kind of suspend disbelief here. Which is, I'm going to start first of all from the diagram, I think. The actual matrix doesn't look at the spending on new cars. In fact, it has a very limited understanding of new cars. Who cares? Because that's not where the most of the expenditure is. New car expenditure is less than 10% of total spend on motoring. Virtually nothing. But there again, you wouldn't have an industry if you didn't have new cars. And there again, you wouldn't have used cars if you didn't have new cars sold. But what we do is to look at the firm as the entity rather than look at common technology, common products. What you're looking at is the supply side. And we look at it as the firm consolidates the results from all the activities it's involved in. Let me give you an example of a car company that survives without taking a government bailout. Ford. Ford survives because it makes money not only in cars, like trucks, but it also makes money out of finance, insurance. In fact, in the good years, in total, across the economic cycle, finance generated nearly 25% of all the profit in Ford. In a bad year, it's 100%. So is Ford a car producer or a bank? Don't worry, it's rhetorical. I'm not asking you to go and shout out. We also look at demand side. You're interested in the complementary spend that goes on in terms of substitutable products and services. If you look at them, just take any car dealer. If you have a nearly new car and you want to buy a new car, they have a huge willingness to buy that nearly new car up. And one of the reasons it is because if it goes into the secondary market, the prices fall very quickly. But who would have thought that the price of the second-hand car supports the sale of the new car? Even worse, who would have thought that the used car could actually substitute for a new car? People who decide to buy nearly new cars. Just to demonstrate this kind of point, a car, typically, if you buy it, you would spend just as much on it if you bought an average price car, on it in a year, running it as you spend on buying it. I'm not talking about £40,000, this is average in the economy. Average in the economy is for every pound you spend on the purchase of a car, that's new and used, you will spend just as much on running it. What the sector matrix does is it takes these assumptions and it turns it on its head. If you look at demand, what you should be looking at is backwards and saying, let's have a look at demand for households and firms. Who buys cars? Households and firms. What is the demand? The household. Now, I'm often told, and it's often repeated, I'm told the success of BMW's marketing strategy or the success of Mercedes' marketing strategy. Well, why doesn't anybody ever actually tell me that it could be because of rising inequality? Because now people can afford, because of inequality, people now aspire to it and they have higher income to buy those products. kind of the unifying principle. The unifying principle of the motor sector matrix is actually consumer wants. Lots of companies will produce products, but does the consumer want it? And will they pay for it? You may want to have a sunroof in a car. You may aspire to a lot of things. It doesn't actually mean that you pay for it. And here, most of our giant firms now, in the industrialised world, and also in the newly industrialising world, are now financialised firms. They are not productionist firms, they are financialised. That is, the primacy of the financial result matters. Not market share, not productivity, does actually generate the returns on capital employed. What firms are doing are moving into different industries and taking market share because they're trying to find profit. Now, in terms of competition, it's all firms competing against all firms. Banks compete against car companies. Why do car companies have to sell finance? Because if they sold finance, if banks just sold finance, banks would then be buying the cars on behalf of the consumer, and they would force the price down. In other words, Ford would end up in a power bind with the banks. There is no appetite for those car manufacturers to actually go for these giant contracts. It may look good in terms of, I would like to sell 1,000 cars in one go, but it will actually drive the margins down and put you in a power relation. And this comes back to directly. Most firms are trying to get out of a power bind. So if it's competition all against all, how does it actually work in practice? Well, what you get is a different grid. You can apply it to any complex product. You could go pharmaceuticals if you wanted, healthcare industry. It works only for complex products that require a bundle of complementary goods and services. So you just don't buy the product. And this is why Apple is not about just stylish products. It's about its capturing your spend thereafter. So, they will continue to capture, and if you want to load software on there, Apple continues to take a cut. If you want to download music, they get a cut. It's the bundle of complementary goods and services that has been a great success. And if you could conceive of industries that could actually follow the supply chain. Let me give you another example in terms of complex industries. Pick rail. Every country, I think, bar now I think India, actually the rail system is heavily subsidised. Yet, we all need the rail system. Why is it that rail doesn't quite make any money? Well, what if it just bought the land around the station and rented? Because most businesses set up around stations. Sometimes it's not possible to go into the matrix so far. But in cars, as the example I'm going to give is, you can apply it to any complex product. You're looking at the demand side. So you look from the bottom upwards as well. You're not interested just in the label of the big company. And I was struck by the earlier presentations where you had the brand companies. Well, the households are more important than companies. You're looking at a complex product, and you're looking at the demand side. You can work out what the expenditure is through the national accounts. You can work out what's happening in terms of returns for the firms through the company accounts. So you've got the demand and the supply, not just supply. For too long, strategy, business analysis is just interested in these sexy labels of Ford and Apple, etc. Demand side is really important. What the sector matrix does, if you compare it against the chain concept, is that supply necessarily affects demand, and demand necessarily affects supply. If you come from an economics background, that might actually be kind of a difficult concept to take. Supply is not necessarily determined by price. It could actually be affected by demand. And what you're looking at is the interaction of supply and demands. And there's dramatic kind of shift that you can get. If you would have thought, for example, used cars, the sale of used cars is 3 times the value of new cars. Used cars, the price of used cars actually goes up in a recession. Can you see what? Why would the price of used cars go up in a recession? That's because if you go 3 years back, in a recession when it first started, new car sales fall dramatically. And when it falls dramatically, the supply of actually cars going into the used car market declines. So the price of used cars goes up. Absurdly, it actually increases demand for new cars because the price differential falls. So this is why when industry commentators look at, it's counter-cyclical or this is unusual, demand for new cars has gone up. Often it goes up because the price of used cars has gone up. And if you're looking at kind of just cars and the industry, you're going to be stuck in a very mundane activity and principally lost in terms of sources of advantage. The advantage comes from the matrix, not about being able to bash metal faster than anybody else. If we go back to kind of 101 in our first lecture, where we did the German industry, no, it was actually the first workshop, where we looked at the German industry.